Hello friends, welcome back to our lessons on the digital SAT. Today we are going to take on a subject on the SAT called the sentence transitions, and this probably is one of the easier parts of your reading and the writing section. So let's straight go into the sentence transitions, what they mean and what they are and how they are poised on the SAT. So you're likely to see 3 to 5 questions on the test paper in each section of your SAT. There are two types of sentence transitions that we are talking about. The first one, which is mostly asked on the digital SAT though, is called the sentence transition by a word. So you will be given a word or maybe at the most a group of words, and you are expected to find out the relationship between the part of sentence says that these words demarcate in order to find the right word or right word fit. And the type number two is basically a phrase, a complete phrase that probably demarcates part one and part two of a sentence. So we are going to nosedive into this and see how they work on the SAT and do some examples based on the College Board test papers. So transition words. So I've given a whole list of transition words. Obviously, there could be more than this ones, but then these are mostly the ones that keep on appearing on the SAT tests. So there is a complete sheet on the lesson as well. If you click to the chapter on the left hand side, you will find the complete list. But then this is something that I'm just trying to show you. I'll take up one or two, and then we will move on to attempting some questions based on these ones. So the general transitions of sentences, sentence A and sentence B, right? So basically the idea is that you have got a sentence part A and sentence part B, and then you have got a transition in the middle, right? Could be with some relationship. As for example, if I say that X is very good at singing, X is very good at singing, right? And X lost the singing competition, right? X lost the competition, suppose. So basically, if I'm looking at X is a very good singer and he lost the competition, obviously the transition between the two is something which is of contrast. It cannot be an addition transition. Though he's a good singer, still he lost. So basically it would mean, so it would go into a contrast situation, and the basic idea behind contrast would be that we would be using words like however, nevertheless, nonetheless, still, granted, that being said, or something like that, right? Okay. So if you're looking at this example that X is a good singer, however, he lost the singing competition, makes sense. But X is a good singer, additionally, he lost the competition, makes absolutely no sense. So for these transition questions, the first thing we are going to do is to establish the relationship between X, or I mean the part A and part B. So we have to establish the relationship before we can go and find some words. So these are the words for various scenarios like additions, comparisons, examples, specific emphasis, clarifications, summative conclusions, comparisons, alternatives. These are all basic types of words that keep on popping up on the SAT, which I have made a list of. Obviously, the whole list is there on the chapter again, so you can go back to the chapter and you can use this as a sheet to understand how it works. So let's go into some examples. The first one that we are taking is an easy example that's set out by the College Board. So let's read it. It has long been thought that humans first crossed a land bridge into America's approximately 13,000-year-old. Okay, fine. So it has long been thought. It has long been thought. So I'm quite sure by looking at this part of the sentence, I would be able to find out that, okay, fine, if it has a long been thought, then there must be something that has changed. So there is a blank out here. So what has long been thought that humans first crossed a land bridge into Americas approximately 13,000 years ago. Okay, fine. So this is thought process one. Thought process one. Has it changed or has it evolved? Based on radiocarbon dating of samples uncovered in Mexico, a research team recently suggested that humans may have arrived more than 30,000 years ago. Wow. So there's the third thought process too, that instead of the long being thought 13,000 years ago, right, now it is established, they are trying to establish that humans must have come 30,000 years ago instead of 13,000 years ago, right? Okay, so I'm quite sure that this is a contrasting relationship between thought 1 and thought 2. So now let's look at what do we have. We have 4 options: as a result, similarly, however, and in conclusion. As a result, as you can understand, is a causation, cause and effect relationship, right? Similarly is addition. This looks like, so if we go back to our sheet, right, okay, contrast and concessions, we will find that however features there, this looks like the most likely answer. And in conclusion is to conclude something. We are not looking at any conclusion. So the most likely answer to this one, which is an easy one, is the answer choice C, right? So let's move on to the next one, which is level 2 difficulty on the SAT. Chumpa Lahiri's story collection, Interpreter of the Maldives, features multiple stories about romantic relationships. Okay, so there's some story collection, right, which features multiple stories about romantic relationships, right? In this, okay, so there is one story probably they are talking about in with an inverted comma. So this is the name of the story, I'm quite sure. The Blessed House. Newlyweds argue over whether to replace items left by previous owners for their new home. Okay, so story 1 out here. Story 1, XYZ, that is the name of the story, right? And something is happening, right? Okay. And then there is a transition in, okay, story 2. Okay, there is a story 2. A temporary matter. Okay, this is the story 2. A husband and wife attempt to rekindle their relationship during a 4-night blackout. Okay, so story 2, XYZ or ABC is happening. So we need to find out the relationship whether ABC and XYZ, right, are contrasting to each other, or what is happening. So it is just that we are comparing what is happening in story 1 and what is happening in story 2. So probably we are just looking at a comparative relationship between story 1 and story 2. So with that in mind, let's try to see our answers, right? So granted is basically a contrast. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm very sure this is not a contrasting relationship. There is no example and there is no cause and effect. So I'm quite sure that the only answer left for this one is a likewise. If we go back to our sheet, we will be also able to find out that for a comparison, we have likewise, similarly. These are some things that we have for relationships of comparison. So the most logical answer to this one has to be a likewise. Now let's move on to a difficult question on the SAT. As given by the College Board, a difficult question. A 2017 study of language learners tested the role of iconicity. Okay, so role of iconicity was tested. Basically, probably this word comes from the word icon, right? How iconic, right, is something, right? So role of iconicity, right? Okay, okay. The similarity of a sign to, okay, so this is the definition: the similarity of a sign to the thing it represents. Okay, so in language acquisition, the study found that greater the iconicity of a sign, the more likely it was to have been learned. Okay, so direct relationship between iconicity and learning. So greater the iconicity, right, greater the learning, right? Okay, this is what it said. Okay. The correlationship between acquisition and iconicity was lower than, okay, so there is a dash and then it says the correlationship between acquisition, that is, the acquisition means learning language, of course, learn, right, and iconicity, right, in the second one. So this is step 1 and this, this is scenario 1 and this is scenario 2, was lower between acquisition and other factors studied. So there are factors wherein the acquisition is higher. The factors related to acquisition is higher than iconicity. So iconicity is less than some other factors. Fine. So in the first one, it says that more the iconicity, greater the acquisition of a language. In the second one, it says, however, there are factors, let's call them A, B, C, D, right, which have got higher value in learning a language than iconicity. So I'm quite sure that this one is a relationship of contrast, right? This contrast. This is a relationship of contrast, that this is important for learning. However, there are things which have got higher value in terms of learning. So we are looking at the word however, right? Okay, fine. So this is relationship of contrast, but we don't find however, but then we find in fact. No, so in fact is definitely something that is explains. No, in other words, something that adds. No. Granted is a contrasting relationship, yes, and as a result is a causation relation, cause and effect. No. So the only word that we are left with is granted. Let's go back to our sheet and see if we have got granted in a contrasting relationship, right? Let's see if we have got granted. We do have granted, right? So we do have granted in the contrast or concessions. So it's a very, very simple, question to attempt. I'm sure that the only thing that we are left with is to understand the relationship between two parts, say part A and part B. The moment we understand the relationship and test the words. So say for in fact, a very simple word, in fact, in other words, as a result, this has got nothing to do with contrast. So the only word that, even if we don't remember that granted falls under the category of contrast and concessions, even if we know the meaning of the word granted or something like that, I mean the way it is used, right? So we would be able to get the answer pretty easily. Nothing more to be deliberated on these kinds of questions. There could be a second type of questions wherein they give you a complete phrase in for transitions, something like this, right? Okay. So probably the deer mice are noted for dramatic population increase after the forest fires. There are fewer foods, fewer obvious food sources for severely burnt areas, and fires often remove all vegetation, giving mice no place to hide and seeking their risk of predation. Okay. So it says that deer mice are noted that dramatic population increase after. So there is an increase in forest population after forest fire, while this part of the story says that actually after forest fires the situation for these mice should be adverse, right? But then still there is an increase. Okay, fine. Deer mice, mouse predators include owls, hawks, owl snakes, and various other members of weasel family. Okay, fine. So this is the portion that we are looking to replace. Because severe fires burnt up the topsoil, mice are able to access previously unexposed part of the seed bank. Furthermore, okay, fine. So this is not something that we are looking at as of now. So we are looking at a transition as to why even the adverse effect causes mice to the population to thrive. So the transition between these two, right, should explain why this is happening despite the conditions being adverse, right? Okay. So we are looking for words why, despite, however, something like that. There is a contrast out here, right? So let's look at the answer. While deer mice are largely herbivorous, they feed on anthropod. This has got nothing to do with answer. No change is not a good answer, because this is completely, this doesn't explain the why they thrive under adversity, right? Since deer mice usually nest high, hollow trees, fires also tend to destroy their preferred habits. This is again negative. This is again causing adversity. So, but despite the apparent disadvantages, okay, it's actually possible that fires improve the conditions for deer mice. Yeah. So this is the possible, most probable answer. Yeah, correct. So let's do one or two more. However, food available on rail lines was generally of terrible quality. Despite having worked for railroad companies, Fred Harvey, an English-born entrepreneur, decided to open his own restaurant. Okay, so we are looking at the food was of terrible quality, and Fred Harvey decided to open his own restaurant business to serve rail customers. So why did he do that despite having, is it, so basically what I understand is that, okay, fine, food was of terrible quality, so he found an opportunity that if you improve, the quality opportunity, if you improve the quality of food, there will be a lot of customers, despite having worked for no. So this is not a good answer, despite working for no. So this is not a good answer. So A, no change is not a good answer. He had lived in New York and New Orleans has got nothing to do with this. To capitalize on the demand for good food. Yes, this is a good answer, and delete down. This is not a good answer. So probable reason for probable answer to this one will be a C. So he saw an opportunity that the quality of food was good. So he opened a good restaurant to serving to these rail customers. He will have good business, right? So capitalize on this demand of good food. Yes. And let's look at this last one, which is 37. Okay, this portion, right? Okay. 1994. So let's look at the whole paragraph. Because philosophy teaches students, so this must be changed somewhere, not what to think, but how to think. The age-old discipline offers consistently useful tools for academic and professional achievement. Okay. In 1994, so this is positive about philosophy, right? Positive about philosophy. So this is positive about it. In 1994, study conducted that only 18% of American colleges required at least one philosophy course. Okay. So again, this is a negative thing, right? Only 18% because it says only. Therefore, between 1992 and 1996, more than 400 independent philosophy departments were eliminated. Again, negative, right? So basically, though there are positive things about philosophy, however, something happened. So this is basically a contrasting relationship, right? This is a contrasting relationship. We are finding out a word that is, or a phrase that is contrasting. Let's look at 37. Consequently, philosophy students have been receiving an increasing number of job offers. Is positive, no. Therefore, evidence, no. Notwithstanding, no. The only word that we are left with is however, and probability is the right answer for this one. So these are very simple questions. I don't think that there is a lot of deliberation required for transition questions on the SAT anyway. But then, yeah, this is how it works. Just by establishing the relationship between part A, right, whatever part it is, and part C, probably with the transitional phrase, we'll be able to understand that this has got to be a contradiction between part A and part C. So stay tuned. The next one would be rhetorical synthesis. Again, a very simple topic on the SAT.